All right, what's up, everybody? It's Alexis Delgado from Project H.E.A.R.T.S and Hartley House, and we're gonna be talking about clear consent. And that's to say that CLEAR is essentially a acronym that we use at Project H.E.A.R.T.S to explain what clear consent looks like. So we're just gonna go through each letter, and then we're gonna explain. Like we said, we're gonna be talking about consent and talking about an acronym called CLEAR. But before we get into that, we need to define two important things when we're talking about consent and CLEAR. Is to define what is consent and what is boundaries. So starting with consent, consent is essentially giving permission to somebody, is pretty much giving them permission or giving them consent to do something. And a boundary is essentially the things that you're okay with and the things that you're not okay with, or a lot of people call it like the invisible lines in your life. So another way of thinking about it is if you have a boundary that maybe you're not allowed to maybe go out at night, then you would have to ask your parents for consent to do that. So your boundary would be not going out at night. And then in order to cross that boundary, you need to ask for consent from a parent or a trusted adult or something like that, whatever, a guardian or whatever you have in your life. That's pretty much the two concepts that we're gonna be focusing on, is what is consent and what are boundaries, and how can we respect people's boundaries and give proper consent. So that's what we're gonna be talking about. We're about to get started. So when we're talking about C stands for choice. So when we're talking about giving and receiving consent, is essentially saying that we need to give the person a choice into what they're consenting towards. So when we're thinking about choice, is just pretty much saying that you can't persuade somebody, or you can't intimidate somebody or force somebody to give consent. It needs to be their free choice. They need to have the ability to make a free choice. So that's the first letter in CLEAR, which is choice. All right. And the next letter in CLEAR is L. L stands for listen, and it just pretty much means that you need to listen to the other person when you're asking or receiving consent. So when we're talking about giving and receiving clear consent, it's very important to listen to what the other person is talking about. So if they're asking you to cross a certain boundary of yours, or maybe they're asking you to do something that maybe you're not super comfortable with, they need to be able to listen to why you're not consenting to that, and you also need to listen to what they're asking about. So it's just important to listen when asking or giving consent, because it just helps to have a lot more clarity in the situation as a whole. Right. And the next letter in CLEAR is E. So E is for enthusiastic. So when we're thinking about enthusiastic, it pretty much means that when somebody's giving consent, so if they're giving somebody permission to do something, they need to be enthusiastic about what they're doing. They need to be visibly excited. It needs to be something that they actually want to do. So if somebody is asking, for example, if you have a friend that you want to hang out with and you ask them if they want to hang out or something, they want to hang out this weekend, and they just respond and they're just like, yeah, I guess I'll go. I mean, all right, I'll go. Like, you see how the person's not very enthusiastic, they're not very excited, it's not really something they really want to do. So when we're thinking about giving clear consent, so it's very clear that they want to do and they want to give consent for whatever you're asking for, it's important that the person is enthusiastic about it. All right, next letter in CLEAR is A. And A is one of the more simple ones. It's pretty much A stands for ask. So just pretty much means that if you're receiving or getting consent for something, it's important to really ask, because when you ask them, it just means that you're respecting their boundaries. So it's like, for example, if you have a friend that just bought some chips and they're walking into, to a group of friends, and they come up with the chips and you just stick your hand in the chips and just take them without asking. You think because you guys are friends, there's no need to ask. Well, it's really important to ask, because it just shows that you respect the person's boundaries. So if we're practicing clear consent, it would mean that you're actually going to ask before, asking for some chips, as opposed to just sticking your hand in the bag. So when we're giving consent, it's just important to ask, because it just shows respect for the other person's boundary. And the final letter in CLEAR, and I think it's one of the most important ones, is R, and R stands for reversible. So reversible essentially just means that you have the choice and you have the right to reverse or change your mind or change your decision. So for example, if there's a situation where you said yes about maybe hanging out with a friend, or said yes about doing one thing, and then maybe later in the day you don't feel like doing it, you have the right to reverse your decision, and you have the right to say no, or vice versa. So it's just really important when we're giving and receiving consent. It's important to respect the person's boundaries and understand that they have the right to reverse the decisions or change their mind. So just to understand, if somebody says yes in a certain situation, they change their mind and say no, they have the right to do that, because that is clear consent, and that is what it means to be reversible. All right, guys, so that is clear, and that is a great way to understand what you need to give clear consent. So just so we can review, we have C. C is for choice, so the other person needs to have a choice to what they're consenting to. And then the next letter is L. L is for listen. It just means that you really need to listen to respect the other person's boundaries and have a full understanding of what's happening. And then E is for enthusiastic. It just pretty much means that the person needs to be visibly excited, needs to be clear that they really want to do it, that they are very excited, enthusiastic about what they're, consenting to do. And then A is pretty simple. A is for ask. It just means that you're actually asking for consent and you're not just crossing boundaries without, respecting the other person. You're asking and you're respecting their boundaries in doing that. And then the final one is R. R is for reversible. It just means that you can change your decision. And if you say no or you say yes at one situation, then say no or yes later, then you have the right to do that because you have the right to reverse your decision. All right, so that is clear consent, and I hope y'all learned something. I hope you guys use this in your day-to-day life just so we can all live a lot more of a smooth, respectful, loving life. So y'all have a great day, and this is Project H.E.A.R.T.S.